Hello everyone and welcome back to the Raiders Madden 2005 franchise mode. We are here immediately following our loss to the Eagles in Super Bowl 41. Our first trip back to the Super Bowl since 2002 when we lost Super Bowl 37. And now we are finally going to get into some off-season festivities. We're going to begin the long trek through the off-season, starting off with some final standings. We're going to finally look over the rest of the final standings. The Titans finish at the top of the AFC at 12-4 for the second straight year. The AFC West sends 3 teams to the playoffs and continues to get tougher for us to play in. Even the Chiefs just barely missed out at 9-7 behind the Browns. The Jets barely scraped by, taking the last divisional seed at 8-8, finishing 8th in the conference. And then the Jags, Steelers, and Dolphins all round out the bottom at 5-11. However, over in the NFC, the Eagles finish on top, make the playoffs for the second straight year, this time as the top seed. Seattle finishes 10-6 and makes the playoffs for the second straight year. The Buccaneers also barely scrape by at 9-7 for the second straight year, but this year 9-7 wins the division. The East also sends 3 teams to the playoffs for the second straight year, and then 4 teams finish with a 6-10 record, and then the Lions are at the bottom with the worst record in the NFL at 3-13. So, looking over the stats now, of course, Tim Couch had his historic season at quarterback with almost 7,000 yards and 60 touchdowns, which is probably an outlier because of the sliders that we're using, but it's still good to see Tim Couch performing very well in the Raiders uniform. Justin Fargas has himself a career year and a contract year, which is important to note later on. Almost hits that 1,000-yard mark, but gets 15 touchdowns, which is really the big thing here. And then Mario Norris with 100 yards exactly. Just 100 yards exactly. The receiving core, though, is really where things kind of blossom here because we have Jerry Porter with almost 2,000 yards receiving on 117 receptions with 20 touchdowns. Goodness gracious. And then Justin Gage gets himself 1,700 yards himself on 111 receptions with 13 touchdowns, which is also just incredible. And then Chris Cole, the third guy on the depth chart, not only gets another Pro Bowl bid, but 1,400 yards and 12 touchdowns on 72 receptions. So we were absolutely feasting here. And then Teo Johnson gets over 700 receiving yards himself. So there's not a single bad part of this receiving core. There really isn't. And the offensive line really showed out. Robert Gallery at left tackle, 0 sacks allowed on 54 pancakes, man. Amazing. And then Barrett Robbins, our center, only allows 1 sack. So Ron Stone kind of the struggle here has a completely down year from last year, but it's okay. I think it's okay. It's going to be all right. Barry Sims, a good season for him as well. And then Napoleon Harris, got to get into the defensive stats now because Napoleon Harris, man, oh my goodness. Career year in tackles here. The sacks number stays about the same here, but 29 TFLs and 127 sacks. Also 4 interceptions. I mean, you got to look at that as well. Warren Sapp leading the team in sacks with 10, which is a career high for him since 2000. So he hasn't been at that number since he's joined Oakland. So good to see that. And then, yeah, Napoleon Harris leading the team in INTs, but Nnamdi Asomugha and Phil Buchanan both having 3 themselves. And then Janikowski kicking 83%, which seems bad because of what we went through with him this year, but it's actually pretty on par with where he has been in an Oakland uniform, at least in the last couple of years. Got to get back up to that 90 percentile, but I think we will. I think we will in time. I think it'll be all right. So, taking a look at our assets following the year, and we made some bank, man. It's possible we might be able to rebuild the Coliseum in the coming seasons if we are smart with our money. But for now, we're probably just going to continue to try and make some upgrades, some slight upgrades to it, and try and raise our fan engagement to keep the games selling pretty well. I think if we continue winning games, obviously the fan engagement will stay high, but there's a lot of small, cheap additions we can make, so I decided to add a few. I don't want to put too much money into it in the event that we do manage to rebuild the Coliseum in Oakland, but there's some money and some things that we can add to it to make it a little bit nicer for fans to come to, since it is an over 40-year-old stadium now at this point. It's been in there a good long while. I think we can afford to move it here, so I'm not sure how much that'll cost, but we'll look at it. So for the first order of business in the offseason, checking the retired players list. We only have a couple Raiders calling it a career, and neither are very important. Trey Johnson and Jason Matthews both are done after 13 years in the NFL, so we may be looking at O-line depth heading into this offseason. But now, if we could look over the rest of the NFL, moving ahead now to the rest of the league's retirements, we have some massive quarterback retirements, man. We have Jeff Garcia retiring from the Browns at 37. Kurt Warner's gone from the Packers at 36. Brett Favre is gone from the Bills at 37. Andre Johnson suffers a career-ending injury at 25, so the Texans will have to continue on without their star young receiver. Mark Bonnell is also out now with Washington. Marshall Faulk is also going to retire from the Rams, leaving them in a pretty tough spot since Warner left a while ago, and now they don't have Marshall Faulk either. But Curtis Martin is also retiring after the Jets lose in the AFC title game. Johnny Morton is also going to retire from the Chiefs, and that is huge, man. Huge for us in the AFC West. The Chiefs are losing one of their top receivers, man. That is just incredible for us. And Kyle Brady is also going to retire from the Jags. That's another big AFC piece that's going to be gone from the NFL now. They're gone. So moving ahead, we don't have any restricted free agents, and there were none worth offering in the league, so we're just going to skip right into re-signing. The first player we're going to re-sign is, of course, Justin Gage, who's due up for a big contract. We'll give him a $25 million contract for the next 4 years to continue to hold down our receiving core along with Jerry Porter. We are also going to give Ron Stone, hopefully his last contract in the NFL. He didn't have a great year, but as a 92 overall at an offensive line position, we definitely have to keep him, I feel. So he's going to hold down the right guard position with Mo Collins behind him, so there might still be something that we can do there, but I just feel safer having Ron Stone still on the roster at that spot, given his overall, despite the production at the position last year especially. We're also going to bring back Denny Clark to probably hold down the left outside linebacker position, since he's better there than anyone else we have on the roster currently there. So he's also relatively cheap, so it may be better than trying to actually buy a left outside linebacker, just going and find a new one. So we're going to give it to him. Despite the tumultuous season here that we had from Janikowski, I can't imagine having to actually go into the offseason looking for a new kicker, so we're just going to give him a huge long-term deal here for 5 years. Hopefully that'll take us through the end of the series, or at least his career, whichever comes first. I'm not sure, but we're going to give him some money here, a long-term deal. But perhaps shocking to some of y'all, but it pays to have a good backup here at 80 overall, and I still like Tuiasosopo at 80 overall. He's only 28 years old, so he's not too expensive of a quarterback either to have, so I think it's, again, kind of like Danny Clark. I think it's just easier to keep him on the roster rather than having to actually go out and find a backup quarterback. But looking over the terms of his deal, we're definitely not going to give him 5 years because there's no point to give him 5 years. So we're going to shorten it a little bit here, and then we're going to offer it to him 3 years. Makes a little bit more sense here. But Langston Walker, we are also going to look at here. This is where staying competitive costs money, because Walker will not be cheap to keep around, but I'm not letting a 90 overall walk in free agency. I'm just not going to. But now we're getting into the big names here. Fargas had a career year in the contract year, as I mentioned, so he's definitely going to get paid. Absolutely going to get paid. And then we also got to bring back Teo Johnson, who's been one of the unsung heroes of the receiving core the past few years. One of the best parts of it, so we're bringing him back. Next, we're going to head straight into the draft, and we already have a big move on the table. Our biggest needs after the re-signing phase is the defensive line, so I'm going to use our 31st pick in the first round to address that. The Bears have Alfonso Boone, who's an 85 overall defensive tackle. I'm going to give them the 31st perk in exchange, but I also tacked on the Bears' 4th round pick, which is the 5th pick in that round, to try and at least sweeten the deal for us. So we're just getting some sort of draft capital back. Maybe we can leverage it into something else and help us out. In the second round, though, I did cook up another deal with the Cardinals this time. So the Cardinals have Bertrand Berry, who is on the back end of a pricey deal, but at 82 overall, I'm willing to take the chance. He also seems to have tapered off since joining Arizona. His numbers are kind of down, especially the sack number. So I'm hoping a change of scenery kind of brings him back to form. So we're going to send over one of our right ends, because we have a bunch of them, to kind of even out the deal here on the roster. And then we're going to take that 4th round pick from the Bears and also send it off to Arizona to kind of help out the deal here, kind of make it a little bit more worthwhile for the Cardinals here on top of our 2nd pick and our terrible right end that we're going to be sending back. So worst case scenario, we might have to move Berry for a 5th or a 6th after his first season in Oakland if he doesn't really kind of bounce back where we need him to be. But I think it's a good deal that we're going to try and pull the trigger on. So here is a look at our draft class now, and this is why I was making trades during the draft. I didn't think we'd be able able to fix our issues with a late pick, and I haven't been able to draft in this game at all, so I'm going to start leveraging those picks. I mainly just targeted positions we need depth at to fill roster requirements like last year. Some of these players are decent, but they'll all probably be getting one-year deals just to fill the roster space. That's kind of it. I mean, there's not really much more to do with the draft. I'm not great at it. I don't know why. I'm just not. The scouting is difficult. So, heading into free agency, we have some big names on the board. Ed Reed is leaving the Ravens after a Pro Bowl season. Albert Haynesworth is available, but worth an awful lot of money. We may be looking at one of those guys, but probably not both. Ed Hartwell is also enticing at linebacker, but we really don't need him like that. Deion Branch looks like fun as well, but again, we really don't need receiver depth like that. As per usual, there's a lot of fun names at positions we're ultimately going to be okay at, so we'll probably end up skipping over most of them, like running back and receiver and stuff like that. But there's a lot of good names here, a lot of good names. So our first big acquisition is going to be Ed Reed, who immediately signed our offer of $17 million for the next 4 years. I love Derek Gibson, but strong safety was a position that needed upgraded. So I did what had to be done and brought Ed Reed here. So shout out to the person a couple years ago who told us to go get Ed Reed in the Cowboys series. We finally have Ed Reed on our team here, and he's a 99 overall free safety. He was going to be, or strong safety, and then free safety also did need some help. So we're going to sign, after we signed Clinton Hart last year as a placeholder, following Ray Buchanan's sudden retirement. So we went out and grabbed Esau Reese, who's a familiar face on the channel as well. He was on the Cowboys team, and he was very bad, but after a few Maddens, he's an 83 overall and an upgrade on the roster. I also signed Tony Williams, who will be on the other side of Alfonso Boone, which should fix our D-line problem. So those are big free agent acquisitions, and now with that, all we need to do is look into our roster at year number 4, see how things are going to shape up. So, of course, we have Tim Couch who's still coming back to start for us at quarterback, with Tuia Sosopo sitting behind him as our backup. Hopefully we don't need to use Tuia Sosopo in moving ahead, but Justin Fargas is, of course, back as our starting running back, with Troy Hambrick sitting behind him at a 77. Morian Norris, a good acquisition from the previous season at fullback still. Jerry Porter, top receiver. Justin Gage. Chris Cole up to an 86, going to be receiver 3, and then Brian Lynch, our first pick from the very first draft we did, is still sitting on the roster at 77. He might be getting moved at the deadline this year. I don't know. Teo Johnson's going to be starting tight end, and then I brought back Doug Jolly as well. Just I like him as good depth. Gallery is still going to be our starting left tackle. I signed some backup offensive line people, so Sims is going to still be our starting left guard. Robbins is still going to be our starting center. And then we have Ron Stone who's coming back at right guard, and then we still have Mo Collins. So again, maybe a deal has to be made here, something here. But we're going to be losing Ron Stone eventually. I can't keep Mo Collins forever though. At that price point, it's just going to be too expensive to keep both. So we'll have to figure something out. Then Langston Walker at right tackle, Warren Sapp, of course, at left end, Bertrand Berry, our new right defensive end, and then we have all of our depth here at that position, which we've acquired throughout the years that we're not probably going to use. Alfonso Boone, our starting defensive tackle, with Tony Williams sitting behind him. So we've really changed up that position a lot. Danny Clark, as I said, is going to be our starting left outside linebacker because he's better than the other ones. Napoleon Harris is still going to start at the middle linebacking position, and then Will Witherspoon, after his season-ending injury last year, is coming back here. Hopefully he has a bounce-back season following his injury. Philip Buchanan, Nnamdi Asomugha, and Denard Walker are kind of the pride of our DB core here, and then Todd McGrady, who I think was a rookie that we drafted last year, is going to make up our DB room. And then we have Ezel Reese, our new starting free safety, and then Ed Reed, our new starting strong safety, with of course Hart and Gibson behind the two of them. Janikowski, of course, our kicker, and then Leckler is going to be our punter. So we secured another local deal, and that's nice to see. Some money there, nice to see that, I guess. I know I said we didn't need receiver help, but I saw that Joey Galloway is still sitting in free agency, and I gotta do it, guys. I gotta do it. He's going to cost us $5 million for the year. We have $5 million on the cap to give, and I imagine he'll retire after the season, so I'm not going to give him any more years. I'm just going to give him a 1-year deal, and he'd be fun to have on the team, man. Just got to do it for the lulz, man. Got to do it for the lulz. Shout out to the Cowboys series. We got to do it for the lulz. It's funny, man. We finished 3-1 in the preseason, for whatever that's worth. We get slaughtered again by the Eagles in the Super Bowl rematch in the preseason, so that sucks. But I don't think anyone really cares too much, too terribly much. Now we got to get to the bad part of assessing the damage from preseason. So we're losing Philip Buchanan for the first 4 weeks of the year due to a stress fracture. So cornerback may be an area of need possibly. Justin Gage is going to miss week 1 with a pinched nerve, which sucks. But we do have now have Galloway, and then Justin Fargas is also still nurturing his own stress fracture, which will hopefully be ready for week 1 or 2 at the latest. Our schedule now goes. We funnily enough have the Bears in week 1, who we've made big trades with. We finished the road trip with Kansas City before home opener in week 3 with the Titans. We also get the Texans at home before we head to Denver to play the Broncos. We get the Chiefs again back in Oakland before we head out to Green Bay to play the Packers in Lambeau. We're home with the Chargers and Vikings, but we get a bye week in between, which is nice. We then head to Cincy to play the Bengals again before flying to San Diego to face the Chargers for the second time. We get the Broncos at home, and then we're back in Jacksonville for the second straight year. We get the Bills at home and then the Colts at Indy, and then we close our year with the Lions at home. So very all over the place schedule with several bad teams like the Lions, Jags, and Bengals, but we also have our division to worry about as well as the Titans and Colts. But there's a lot of storylines here in week 1 against the Bears, so hopefully you guys can come back for that one. Thank you so much for watching, man. The quest to get back to Super Bowl 42 begins now. We got a long trek to go here, but hopefully we can show out in Chicago in our very first game. It's a tough season last year, but we managed to come out on top. So hopefully we can make the playoffs a little bit easier here. Hopefully the AFC West loses a step. I doubt they will, but either way, thank you guys so much for watching the Raiders series. We're going to continue on with the Bears.